Welcome to the So You Want to Be a Data Scientist podcast. Here we interview awesome data scientists and other data professionals. This show is part of the website So You Want to Be a Data Scientist.com. After listening, take my free data science Kickstarter course to learn what it takes to become a data scientist. In the meantime, enjoy the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the So You Want to Be a Data Scientist podcast. Today, I have Shivali Goel with me. She's a globalization engineer at Adobe, and she's an NLP enthusiast. So, welcome, Shivali.
Thank you, Misra. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So, let's start with your position first. What do you do? What does a globalization engineer do?
It's a very interesting role. A globalization engineer is responsible for designing products with global users in mind. So you'd notice that most of the web apps or digital content online is in English. And that is
Hmm.
when English is not even the most widely spoken language across the world. So, as a globalization engineer, I would work with the development teams to make these apps or digital experiences available in different languages for different regions. This problem may seem trivial at first, that some people say that, oh, so you just translate the products, but that's just the beginning. It involves addition of culturally relevant new features into the product with each region and each language, the number, date, time format, alignment, left to right, text alignment for languages like Arabic, the way we take user input, and even colors have different significance for different people in different regions. So basically catering to this worldwide audience with your product that is coded only once involves adopting a smart and different style of programming from the very beginning. And so that's what we do as globalization engineers. We enable the development teams to write internationalizable code to deliver world ready software.
Wow, but that sounds like you also need to have a lot of knowledge of different cultures.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I want to go into more details about what kind of projects you do there, but I also want to know. So, you said you're a natural language processing enthusiast. So, how does that fit in the position of globalization engineer?
Yes. So, starting with the easiest to guess, translation, of course. So, we use neural machine translation and a mix of neural machine translation and human translation to localize our products. So, all the technology built around it, for example, customizing the translations for every product, is NLP. And also the infrastructure that we provide to the development teams to catch these internationalization issues is also AI based. And sometimes it's a mix of computer vision followed by NLP.
I see. So, that's one of the main things that you basically use, one of the main tools that you use at your job.
Yes.
Nice. So, before we go into the details of the, technicalities of what you use at your job, I also want to know more about you. So, how did you end up where you are? Can you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, of course. Um, so this all started when I pursued my bachelor's degree in computer science. But it took me a lot of experimenting and trying out new projects to finally get to where I am today. If you had asked me in my freshman year that whether this is what I wanted to be, I would have probably responded with a confused look on my face. So I remember in my freshman year, I did a digital marketing internship with Adobe, which is like completely different from what I'm doing right now. In my next year, I took up a web development role, and it's actually from my second year that I started doing research with my professor and focused on machine learning.
Hmm.
And within that as well, my first few projects were computer visions. And I'm glad that I have an experience with that as well. But since then, I've just loved and been focusing on NLP. I went to Columbia for my master's in computer science and chose to specialize with the NLP track.
Nice. So, you basically started with some side projects during your studies, and that got you excited, and then you decided to take a master's degree on it.
Yes. And also, I believe that for me, trying was the key. And it took me a lot of time, actually years of trying out all those different things for me to realize what I was good at and what I enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's a bonus. Everything you get to learn while exploring also will come in use in some way, shape, or form in your life. So I was happy that I tried like so many things and then finally ended up here.
Yeah, and that's actually pretty good. That I think you're like very young and you're at the beginning of your career, but at the same time you are already very specialized in NLP. Because what I see, the pattern I see in the industry today is people start as being data scientists, but they're not very sure of which specialization that they should
Mm-hmm.
go into. I mean, not everyone, of course, have to be specialized in some way. That we can also be a generalized data scientist, but it's
Yeah.
great that you already realized during your studies that you want to go into the NLP branch of AI.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you said you basically started doing projects during your studies, and then you did an internship on top of that that helped you. Did you do any other certification, for example, online courses, boot camps, stuff like that?
Um, Online courses were actually need-based. So if I was studying for a particular project, if I was researching, then I would just go online and search for relevant courses. But I think for the role that I have right now, programming skills are definitely a must. But for a globalization role, you need to be someone who knows like different languages and cultures. And for my role, I guess knowing a third language definitely helps because when I'm writing code, I'm able to do a quick test for at least three languages. That is like English, Hindi, and German,
Yeah.
because these are the languages I know. So I think having this extra knowledge of a language helps.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. And so you said, so I want to go a little bit more into the details of what you do every day and the kind of projects that you're doing.
Hmm.
So you said you are basically using NLP, for example, for translation
Hmm.
while doing this globalization. Can you give us some other examples of projects that you worked on?
Yep. So I've worked on different projects. So during my undergrad, I interned with Sistran. That's a company based in Paris that provides translation services. So my project there was to use methods like cross-lingual textual entailment to improve the quality of training data that we use to train the machine translation engines. I think this project was important because it gave me. I looked at data science from different perspective. It's not just always the engine training. It's the data preparation is also very important. And then when I was at Columbia, I did a joint project with Viacom to analyze TV scripts. This was a challenging project because we were working with unstructured data to extract entities, emotions, and themes in the TV scripts. And my next project, I also worked briefly with speech. So, analyze the expression of emotions in spoken languages for five different languages. So, we did some experiments which suggested that emotions in speech are language agnostic. So, irrespective of the language, people use similar vocal cues like pitch, intensity when they express emotions. And that was really interesting. And I think that also helped me gain a more global perspective. And it's it is, I think the pieces are fitting well and leading me up to this like globalization role. I didn't know it back then, but reflecting back, I see like most of my projects are like cross-lingual and based on NLP and different languages.
No, it sounds really great. And also, it's already really hard to do work on one language, especially if you're doing voice analysis and like, let alone five languages at the same time. So NLP is your main tool, as far as I understood.
Hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about the process of your project? So, how much of your time is spent preparing the data? How much of your time is spent collecting the data or building a model? Yeah, so how do you spend your time per your tasks?
Using AI in the globalization team is a fairly new task, and we don't have data that is like ready for use to train an engine. So I think I would say that most of my time is spent in actually collecting the data and then like pre-processing it. So that takes up around 60% of my
Oh,
time, I'd
okay.
say. And the rest is basically like designing a model and training it. And since my role is not just research, I also have to work on the other internal globalization tools like the pipeline, which actually helps us ship these changes or translations to the actual development teams. So part of my day or at work also goes into like working and improving those tools.
I see. And is there a part of your job that is highly people facing? Like, do you have to attend a lot of meetings to decide, what needs to be done, etc.?
Mm, yes, I guess this one, my role is probably the most people-facing software development role. And yes, there are a lot of meetings. We have to meet with linguists when there are mistranslations, with developers to help them internationalize their code. Then we have our internal team meetings to develop the tools to handle all these globalization efforts for so many products. And then we have the meeting with experienced managers to learn about issues that stakeholders in different countries are facing. So yes, it's kind of people facing, and it's as people facing as it can get.
Yeah, I can imagine because it's a very specific thing when you're working with language because there are things that are right and wrong, and you definitely need to consult with experts in the area. I mean, I
Yeah,
would assume.
yeah.
Of course, as part of your job, then you need to create some machine learning models, right? And of course, it must be hard to evaluate them at the end. So, do you have a process for evaluating these models, especially the language ones? Like, do you consult with linguists in that sense?
Yes, we consult with linguists to check the quality of the content that we are delivering, and also the most of the models that I'm working on currently are basically to detect the issues with localized content. So, for example, when you're delivering a product that's in German, the sentence length varies a lot, and the sentences in German would be longer than sentences in English. So sometimes the UI can break because of the length of strings, and there can be some truncations or overlapping issues there. So most of the AI-based models that I'm working on detect these kind of issues.
Hmm.
So they actually help the people who are testing the localized products.
Yeah, yeah. But it also makes it sound like, this is a very big process. So maybe even for like a normal data scientist, it will be simpler. Yes, you need a little bit of domain knowledge, but most of the time you can use common sense. But in your case, you really need specialized knowledge. So that I feel like that makes it a little bit of a harder job.
Yeah.
And then what the question that comes to me is, then do you have like a big team that takes care of different parts of the model development? For example, one person could be developing the model, another person could be responsible for making sure that it's up to the standards of the company.
Mhm. So in itself, the globalization team is a small team, and you can imagine the amount of product offerings that Adobe has. So we work with so many products. So how it works is we have like our own products that we are responsible for localizing.
Hmm.
So we work on particular products, but say I speak German in the team and then someone else speaks Japanese. So if there's like an issue that probably I can't see, then I'll consult with my team member, and no, and obviously like for the final check, we have linguists who are like specialized in all the languages to do it. But yeah, so it's a small team, but we work with so many product teams. So it's basically a lot of people that we work with, but internally it's a small team.
I see. So you're basically like specialized globalization specialized people, and then you get help from more product teams and linguists and, yeah, experts basically in different areas.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
Yeah.
And how do projects happen? Do you have like a constant backlog of what needs to happen from the company, or do you come up with like new projects all the time?
The way it works is that the product teams would often reach out to our team to help them internationalize their product. And then we would work with their developers to analyze the code structure and suggest changes on their end. Or if that's not possible, we would work on building a solution on top of the product to make it deployable in different regions.
Hmm.
And also, since all these digital products are so dynamic in nature, we would we might work on a pipeline that enables like continuous localization of the product.
I see.
So we need to keep up with the updates for all the regions as and when the product changes.
I see. And then does that mean that you're also responsible for the maintenance of the thing that you're making in the future?
Yes, yes.
I see. And do you also do deployment work then? Like not only make a model, let's say NLP model, but also like making sure that it's deployed and it's working and like the whole pipeline.
Yes, we do that as well. But the product deployment is in the hands of the product team. We are just like responsible for the localization aspect of it.
I see. Yeah, it sounds like you guys are basically like superheroes that can do like data science, very specialized data science, but at the same time, like they know how to do engineering, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like it's a good thing that we get to work with so many developers, and like when we are working with so many data like code bases, it sometimes gets challenging to understand the code because if you're just a part of a product team, you might be working on one specific feature for that product, but in the globalization team, you generally deal with the code bases of so many products, and each team would have their own style of writing code and organizing it,
Hmm.
so you have to like understand it and then globalize
Yeah,
it.
I can imagine how that can be super confusing after a while.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we already talked about this a little bit, but just to, underline it. So, you typically deliver, as far as I understand, that like a whole system. Someone comes to you with a
Mhm.
request, and then you globalize that product for them. But is there anything else that you deliver as part of your services?
So, in short, our team would deliver the localized content that would fit back into the product, the pipeline to send and receive this localized content, and also the test results that after all this localization is done, how does the overall product look and if it's fine across different regions.
I see. So, can we say that's basically like a standardized product that you're offering to other product teams?
Mhm.
And what are the tools that you use at your job, especially for NLP?
So for NLP, I mostly use Python. JavaScript and some shell scripting also comes handy for my daily tasks at work. Apart from it, we have internal tools that we use for globalization process. And there are so many open source tools and libraries that you can use to internationalize your code. So React INTL is used for React applications, and it provides an API to format those dates, numbers, strings, handle translations, and all of it. So if you're building a React-based app, I would definitely suggest you to use this and internationalize your web app. And then for JavaScript, there's this library called I18 Next. It's also for internationalizing your code. Um, yeah, and there are a few others available as well.
I see. So there are like special frameworks for internationalizing a piece of code.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. I had no idea. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how you like your job. So, can you tell me what the most exciting thing about your job is?
Um, I am a people person and I consider myself an extrovert, but at the same time, I'm an engineer. So I think this role is the perfect fit for me because I get to like work on so many products, and because of that, I'm always interacting with different kinds of people like linguists, developers, experience managers, and so I love this kind of interaction and this kind of global community that I automatically become a part of. And also, there's some travel involved with this job. which I haven't really experienced yet thanks to COVID. But I think that's something that's really exciting for me as well.
Nice. Okay, so what about the most boring part of your job? Or the thing that you like the least about what you're doing?
I wouldn't say that it's boring, but the job, as I mentioned earlier, the job gets pretty challenging because you try and understand code from like different developers across the globe, and they have their own style and structure of organizing and writing it. And at the same time, my day can start with an 8 a.m. meeting and end with a 9 p.m. because of the time zones. And so that can be overwhelming, but I'm not complaining because I like it.
Okay, yeah, you said you're a people's person, so I guess you don't mind the meetings.
Yep.
Okay, so what about being a woman in this area? Because you're in a highly technical role, which is an engineering role, and that tends to be a little bit more male dominated. Have you encountered any bias during your role or before while you were training to become a globalization engineer?
I would say that I understand and I'm aware of these biases, but fortunately, I've worked in places where issues like this, gender and racial biases, are taken very seriously and also talked about openly. So I haven't experienced it at work, although back home I had my own set of challenges. Like when I was applying for my master's, me and my mom had to go through this very difficult conversation with my family, explaining to them why I wanted to like leave my current job offer and go abroad to study and be away from my family. And I'm literally the only person here, so I don't have family around me. So that was a bit difficult to explain to the whole family that why do I want to go.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. So, do you have any advice for people then who want to go where you are? This could be a globalization engineer position, or basically, it could be someone who works heavily with natural language processing.
Yeah, I would like to say that throughout my bachelor's and my master's, I undertook a lot of NLP projects. So I would like read a lot of papers and try to be well informed of the state of the art in that area. But I think what helped me in all my internship and job interviews was my in-depth knowledge with like one project. So for me, that was machine translation, and that was the project that most people were interested about or interviewed me about. So my final words, like, or an advice would be that be a jack of all, but at least be a master of one.
Yeah, I think that's a really good advice, definitely. So, Shivali, thanks a lot for being here today. It was a really fun conversation and it was very nice having you here. Yeah, thank you for your time and yeah, hope to talk to you soon.
Yes, thank you for having me, Mr. It was great talking to you.
That's really nice to hear. Hey, thank you for listening and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to take my free data science Kickstarter course to learn what it takes to become a data scientist. See you next time.